Coming up on this week's edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
We'll tell you how NCBA is working to ensure the Biden administration understands the positive role agriculture plays in addressing climate concerns, plus see how consumers across the country got a look at some great new beef recipes.
And now, NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
Hi everybody and welcome to NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. I'm Russell Nimitz. Thanks for joining us. We begin in our nation's capital, where it's been clear from the start that the climate is a top priority for President Biden. Cattle producers already know the positive role agriculture plays in addressing climate concerns and want to help make sure the new president knows it as well. So how will NCBA work with the Biden administration on the topic of climate change? Well, we've got a closer look in this week's Beltway Beef Spotlight.
We knew that coming into the Biden administration, the president himself and all of his cabinet level focus was going to be on a singular topic, climate. Now, from the day one executive orders that set the stage for a variety of climate actions in the first 100 days to more recent announcements, this notion of climate, of sustainability, and the stewardship of land and water resources has been at the center of every conversation that NCBA has had. And at the center of our message in all of those conversations is the notion, is the truth that grazing is good for the environment. Whether you're talking about improving riparian areas and improving organic matter in very dry soils, or making sure that you're preventing invasive species encroachment, all things important for climate goals, grazing is the primary and best tool to achieve those objectives. And we have good components of that story to share, no matter whether we're talking about greenhouse gas emissions or we're talking about emissions profiles in general. We're talking about land stewardship or water stewardship, habitat improvement for wildlife and other livestock as well. We have the story, we have the proof, the generational proof for policy, for regulation to be developed on this foundation. Grazing and the good work that you do every day is seen not only through the yield of your cattle and your livestock, but also in the long-time health and productivity of your landscape. These are models, these are truths that need to be built into the administration's concepts of how to conserve landscapes, whether it's 30% of the landscapes or lands they already manage. In order to achieve global climate goals, these landscapes are critical. They must learn from your expertise. They must involve you. And so far, we've seen a significant willingness to draw on the generations of expertise that you have to offer. The other area of expertise is not just in the land and water stewardship, though it's in this question of economic stability. As we know, sustainability in general is based on not only environmental and social sustainability, but also economic stability as well. On your farm or ranch, you know that in order to be economically viable, you need to be able to have sound business practices, have predictability, and know where your money is going to be best used. The federal government needs to do the same. Now, federal budgeting is a little different than your books on your farm or ranch. But the simple fact is that some of these climate proposals coming out of the administration are going to be costly, not only for implementation and new money coming from Congress through appropriations, but also for communities as they implement whatever the organizations in the department are going to bring down through regulation and law. At the end of the day, NCBA is not only involved in telling the good story of grazing, but also keeping a very close eye on discussions as they pursue additional measures like tax and additional appropriations, making sure that economic viability is present in front of the White House, in front of the agencies, and is going to be supportive, not restrictive, of your business practices. From the halls of Congress to the halls of the agency to your farm and ranch, this sustainability, this climate of strong business environment and strong economic stewardship is going to continue to be a focus of our work here in Washington, D.C.
And joining us now to talk more about sustainability is Clay Bertram, the NCBA's Federation of State Beef Council's chair from Stillwater, Oklahoma. And Clay, given just how charged the social climate here is of late, how important is it for cattlemen and women across the country to really tell their great story about the beef cattle industry? And maybe while we're at it, how do you think that conversation is going to change in the future?
Well, Russell, thanks for having me here today. It's sure a lot greener here in Florida than it is in central Oklahoma right now. And who better than to tell their story than us as cattlemen? Who do consumers trust more than us to tell our story about sustainability and that great, wholesome, nutritious product of beef? It's best that they hear that from us as cattle producers.
Can you talk a little bit more, Clay, about what the perception is with consumers out there about our industry and this topic of sustainability, and maybe a little bit more about what they want out of us?
I think what they want to hear is how we produce that product. What are we doing to be sustainable on this land? Whether that's rotational grazing, to what kind of cows are we using to produce that great wholesome product, to what product are we putting on the shelves. I think we just saw that through this recent pandemic. The shelves were empty of our great wholesome product that we produce. You look at the packing industry, how the backup and the products that we have. You can't get a local locker to get in right now. So we see that people are demanding our great, wholesome, nutritious product that we're putting out each and every day.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, without question, we did see it during this COVID-19 pandemic, just how much more telling our great story goes and has an impact on their purchasing decisions. I guess go into further detail about why it's so important for us to tell that story.
It's just, we want to leave a legacy. You know, I've got daughters that want to continue to run this operation, my operation back in central Oklahoma. You know, just like the Blackbeard's Ranch that we're on today, they have a great story to tell. I have a great story to tell. Each one of you that are watching today have a story to tell. So we want to leave that legacy that we have on our operations, and sustainability has a great story to tell. And if we're not at the table when we're talking about sustainability, we might be on the menu. Whether we're just there to talk or we're just there to listen, we have to be a part of these discussions about sustainability. And being a part of the Federation of State Beef Councils and with our state partners, we have to be a part of that conversation.
And finally, Clay, how does research and science play into sustainable food systems and the future of industries like the U.S. beef cattle industry?
Well, we produce the #1 protein, in my opinion, in a wholesome product of beef. And research is one of our #1 pillars, and that's why we put the dollars behind it within the Federation of State Beef Councils and with the State Beef Councils as a part of our partnership with them. And research has to be a part of those, whether that's with the grants that we work with our universities and partners, and each year with the Beef Promotion Operating Committee, and those dollars that we put behind those ARs, and what we do with our partnerships across all of our industries.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being with us here on Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
Thanks for having me.
Sustainability research is funded by Beef Checkoff dollars, and you can track the latest findings and get valuable information on sustainability and how it's impacting the beef cattle industry by visiting the website beefresearch.org. Still ahead here on Cattlemen to Cattlemen, we have a closer look at a special media event designed to show off some great beef recipes while highlighting the sustainability of the beef industry. That story right after this.
They're here, they're hungry, and they can't be stopped with ivermectin alone. Add Safeguard when you deworm your cattle to take out resistant parasites like brown stomach worm, Cooperia, Nematodirus, and others. With 2 dewormers from 2 different classes, you can kill more resistant worms in your cattle, so you don't leave potential on the table. Consult your veterinarian for the diagnosis and treatment of parasitism. Then bite back at safeguardworks.com.
It's time to tune in to Tennessee for CattleCon 2021. CattleCon is the oldest and largest event in the beef cattle industry, and we're headed to the Music City, a city filled with the best music, great food, and some down-home Southern hospitality. And you can't afford to miss the huge NCBA trade show.
It's our Super Bowl event. It's where all the producers come. We gain a lot of knowledge from producers who we've come to know over the years.
There's no better place for cattlemen and women to learn, have fun, and connect with fellow producers from across the country.
The value of it is I get to connect with tons of different producers around the United States and be able to learn from different people as well as meet and network with tons of different companies.
Dynamic speakers, unbeatable education, all for cattle producers. So plan to tune in to Tennessee for CattleCon 2021. Visit convention.ncba.org for more.
The NCBA and Beef Checkoff work hard to make sure that when consumers hit the meat case, they choose beef. Here to talk a little bit about a special media event recently is Hillary Makins, the Senior Director of Issues Management and Public Relations for the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. And Hillary, tell us about the reason for this special media event here at Blackbeard's Ranch.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. So we know that consumers don't always know where their food comes from. So having an event like this, we're really able to teach them about the beautiful beef that they enjoy cooking, but where it comes from and how it's raised sustainably. And so that's what we're doing here, pairing a chef with a cattle rancher to talk about this amazing product.
And why is educating consumers about sustainability so important?
Well, one of the things that we really want to do is obviously to break down barriers to consumption of beef. And we know that there's a lot of chatter around sustainability and the environment right now. So being able to talk about that and being able to show that on this beautiful landscape and to help consumers really feel like they're out here on the ranch and feel good about the beef that they're eating really goes a long way when they're at the meat case choosing their dinner.
And what makes Chef Hugh Atchison the perfect man for this job?
Chef Atchison, twofold. He's a celebrity chef. So he's a big name. People want to book him. People want to hear what he has to say. He can show us how to use beef in a wonderful way and inspire consumers to cook it. But also he has his own following, and they too want to hear what he has to say. So not only are we reaching our regular set of consumers, but we're also tapping into his entire fan base as well, and really being able to amplify that message.
Now I want you to describe a little bit why it wasn't just important to have Chef Hugh with us here at Blackbeard's Ranch, but also rancher Jim Strickland himself.
Yeah, well, like I said, people don't always know where their food comes from, but letting them meet a rancher and letting them see where their food comes from is really important in helping consumers feel connected, to understand that, you know, ranchers are just like them. These are normal people. They care about the animals, they care about the land, and they care about that end product, and that makes consumers feel good and want to eat more beef.
And what was the response that you received from area TV stations? Were they interested in this type of content?
Yeah, we had a wonderful response. In a 5-hour period, we did more than 20 interviews with TV and radio stations all across the country. So people were really excited to hear what we had to say and to see the great food.
And finally, Hillary, what are some of the other things you're working on currently to make sure that consumers across the nation continue to choose beef?
Absolutely. We have a lot going on. NCBA, as a contractor to the Beef Checkoff, is always working, like I said, to break down those barriers to beef consumption. On the sustainability front, we're launching a sustainability campaign right now. We are working on a letter to the editor campaign, working with farmers and ranchers all across the country to write letters to their local publications. And then we have a lot of more exciting things coming in addition to this project with advertising and more coming throughout the summer. So stay tuned for more.
Awesome. No doubt some exciting news for the U.S. beef cattle industry and the very men and women producing this delicious protein. Again, Hillary Makins, the Senior Director of Issues Management and Public Relations for the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. Now, if you have questions about beef industry sustainability or need facts to help answer consumer questions, visit beefitswhatsfordinner.com and click on the Raising Beef tab. Still ahead here on NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen, we'll tell you how multiple stakeholders are working together to support and advance the sustainability of the beef industry. Don't go away, we'll have more right after this.
We didn't just design the 6M tractors with you in mind. We designed them with you by our side. The new 6M tractors from John Deere, reimagined by you, for you. With improved visibility, better maneuverability, and more ways to customize, so you get everything you need and nothing you don't. Experience the new 6M at your local John Deere dealer.
The these are the pennies it costs for Alticid IGR protection, making it one of the best values in the market designed specifically for fighting hornflies on pasture. As a supplement, Alticid IGR is part of what you're already doing, and as a feed-through, what your cattle are always doing. Take shelter from the swarm for just 2 to 3 cents per animal per day. That's just $4.50 per animal per season for hornfly protection that has been performing for over 40 years with no known resistance. Alticid IGR.
America's beef producers have long been leaders in the area of sustainability, and that's because the only way we're going to meet growing global demand is by balancing environmental responsibility as well as economic opportunity. Years ago, a diverse group of beef industry stakeholders came together in order to highlight the sustainability of American beef. Cattlemen to Cattlemen reporter Brian Baxter has an update on the ongoing efforts of the U.S. Roundtable for Sustainable Beef.
The U.S. Roundtable for Sustainable Beef brings together industry stakeholders to address concerns about beef sustainability, identify opportunities to improve, and to build trust with consumers.
The U.S. Roundtable started in 2015 as a group of retailers, beef producers, feed yards, and processors of beef came together in a collaborative effort to talk about issues around sustainability and talk about how we can move forward. As a group, we now are over 120 members strong, and we continue to grow and we continue to work and collaborate to get these things done in the name of beef sustainability in the U.S.
I think for a long time, cattle producers and the cattle industry have really felt like sustainability, the term, the phrase, is a trend that might go away. And I think what we've learned, the craving that consumers have for information about the food that they eat, is just getting stronger. They want to know more about how the animal was raised, what products are used, whether it was treated in the proper way or not. And we have a lot of those answers, and so that's, I think, the important thing about engaging in the conversation is that can be that educational platform to our consumers and to those influencers who really care about these issues.
The early work of the USRSB focused on defining sustainability and deciding which areas within the supply chain are critical to beef industry sustainability.
So we identified 6 key performance indicators that we thought would be the most valuable in moving the U.S. beef industry forward in the area of sustainability. Land resources, water resources, air and greenhouse gas emissions, efficiency and yield, animal health and well-being, and employee safety and well-being. We did that work over the course of about 2 years, which for some that seems slow, but in reality we were moving at a very quick pace as we were trying to bring together all stakeholders so that we could honor their viewpoints on these topics, on these critical topics for beef sustainability. We completed those tasks, and that allowed us to set forth a sustainability assessment guidelines.
Those sustainability assessment guidelines are unique for each sector of the beef industry and provide valuable tools and resources for operations to assess their own sustainability progress.
We developed a self-assessment tool, which is an online tool that anyone in the beef industry, whether you're a producer, a feed yard, a packer, a processor, or a retailer, can go to this online tool and evaluate where they are in terms of their sustainability journey.
Very, very easy to use, free to anybody who wants to use it, and applicable for anybody in, whether you're in the cow-calf sector, auction market sector, feed yard, packer processor, or you're a retailer food service entity. All those sectors are covered, and it's a quick and easy way to understand, maybe where you are in the sustainability journey, where you are in your story, and opportunities to apply some resources to maybe improve that.
The USRSB has created one-of-a-kind educational modules which help operations and businesses throughout the entire beef value chain identify actions they can take to improve sustainability.
We began working on modules, an online training tool that would allow people in any one of the sectors to get practical learning on the topics of sustainability for their sector. Each one of those groups will have access to this online tool that will help them in their journey of continuous improvement in sustainability.
Demonstrating continuous improvement is critical for the beef community, but it's often difficult to get everyone on the same page. Part of the success of the U.S. Roundtable for Sustainable Beef is its ability to bring together a diverse group and get them to agree on a common vision.
It's not something that you just walk in one day and put it on a piece of paper and everything's decided on and you move forward. We have a lot of back and forth, a lot of interaction. But as we move forward, we're going to continue to get this job done so that we have a nice, robust set of goals that both the industry can buy into and appreciate, and society as a whole can look at and have a good feeling about what we're doing to support sustainability in the U.S. beef industry.
These ongoing efforts are aimed at helping to build trust between consumers and the beef industry and hold the promise of offering more profit for everyone in the beef supply chain.
I'd encourage all cattle producers across this country to view sustainability as an opportunity, because that's ultimately, I think, how you bring dollars back to the farmer ranch. You find a way to showcase those improvements, and then you capitalize on that.
All of us are in this together, whether you're a beef producer, a feed yard operator, a packer processor, or a retailer. And the reason is simple. We want to sell more beef. And so as we sell more, we also want it to be a quality product, a product that people can feel good about it. It's important for every one of us to do the right things so that people can feel good about the product that we put out there.
I'm Brian Baxter reporting for NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
Now you can follow the work of the U.S. Roundtable for Sustainable Beef at their website, usrsb.org. Well, sustainability is a very important topic for the entire U.S. beef cattle industry, both at the national and state level. And joining us now to talk more about this important topic are Jim Hanley, the Executive Vice President of the Florida Cattlemen's Association, and Gene Lawless, the Florida Cattlemen's Association President. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us here on Cattlemen to Cattlemen. Gene, let's start with you. I want to ask you first thing out of the chute, how have you seen the conversation change over the years when it comes to this topic of sustainability?
Well, sustainability for years was kind of highly suspect, for everybody kind of looking, what does it mean to you? And so over the years, you can see that it's changed because now we have to embrace it. We know we have the most sustainable industry in the country, with cattle ranching. We have the story and sustainability with the wildlife, with the waters, with all the things that we do on a daily basis.
Absolutely. There's always a lot going on in the beef cattle industry and for cattlemen and cattlewomen. Jim, when it comes to questions from consumers about sustainability, what are some of the things you're being asked and what do you tell them?
Well, Russ, in this information age, as you well know, people are getting so many different messages that you have to really dig deep and understand what they're basing their questions on. But really, they ask, they really ask about chemicals that we might be putting into the environment. They talk about the care and well-being of cattle. How are they handled? Are we hard and harsh on our land and our water? And we boil everything down in science. We make sure that they understand the scientific fact. And when you walk them through the makeup of the industry and the economic situation, they come pretty quickly to understand we don't use a thimbleful more of any chemicals or fertilizers than absolutely possible.
What are some of the things that state organizations like the Florida Cattlemen's Association are doing to get ahead of the conversation when it comes to sustainability?
Well, we're trying to open our gates. We're trying to help our producers understand that we can't just stay out here and enjoy these beautiful ranches, but we've got to do a lot more outreach. We've got to communicate. We've got to be more proactive in our messaging. And people just want to come and see it. If we get to spend a little campfire time with them, if you will, a little time in the woods, on the ranches, around cattle, around the families, if they just give us a little bit of time, they quickly realize that the real story and the real message is that there's a tremendous amount of environmental stewardship and a hugely sustainable industry across the country.
You know, Gene, let's talk a little bit about Florida's urbanization and growing population here in the Sunshine State and talk about some of the challenges along with the opportunities when it comes to cattlemen and cattlewomen like yourself in the area of sustainability and land uses.
Well, there's no doubt. I mean, 22.5 million people live in the state of Florida today, and with 1,000 plus a day moving in. So you look at the challenge of urbanization moving out, you know, as I was talking to a reporter earlier this morning, you know, agriculture always is fringe. Everybody builds out. And now we're in the crux of being pushed out. So one of the biggest things is getting out and telling our story.
You bet. Jim, I'm going to come over to you for just a minute or so. Let's talk about how the state associations like the Florida Cattlemen's Association are working with the national organization on this big topic.
Well, Russ, we count on them to help us with the research they do, understanding consumers' attitudes and perceptions, and then they help us formulate talking points that are understood and embraced by the consumers and the rest of the population base. So it's a unified message. We speak in terms of scientific fact, and we boil it down in understandable language that hits key points. But the research that's done at the national level and the manpower and the strength that they have, it trickles down to the states, and it has us all telling the same message. We just customize it to our particular part of the country and the segments of the industry that we represent. Predominantly Florida is cow-calf state, and we have big ranches and cattle stocked at 7 acres per mama cow, and it's not very intensive, but we have to have people understand that.
Yeah, you bet we do. And Gene, let's kind of wrap things up with you, just following up on Jim's answer there. Why is it so important then to have cattlemen and cattlewomen like yourself who are on the front lines when it comes to very important topics like sustainability and conservation to be continuing to tell that great story that you have to share?
Well, I think as Mr. Hanley already pointed out, you know, we got to open gates. We also got to open minds. So by getting out and sharing that story about conservation, about sustainability, about the things that we do on a natural day-to-day basis is the importance for us to tell our story versus someone else trying to tell it for us.
Gentlemen, as always, we appreciate you joining us here on Cattlemen to Cattlemen. Again, we've been visiting with Jim Hanley, the Executive Vice President of the Florida Cattlemen's Association, as well as the Florida Cattlemen's Association's President, Gene Lawless. A great way to stay on top of this and other important issues facing the cattle industry is to become a member of NCBA, and it's easy to join. Just call 1-866-233-3872 or visit the website ncba.org. Still to come, we'll introduce you to an award-winning operation in Colorado that has made stewardship and conservation a priority. That story when we return.
Weeds will rob me of my investments. The weeds are not palatable to cows. They will not eat them, or if they do eat them, some of them may be toxic. So there's a return on investment by allowing there to be more grass available to be grazed by the cattle.
That certain time in the day when you can take a deep breath, knowing your work is done. That's the feeling Aspen products can create. Cost-effective alternatives to name brands that deliver the same results. Qualaxin is one of them. Use it to prevent and treat respiratory disease in your herd. Then breathe easy. Find them at Animal Health International.
It can be tough to keep up with all the issues that impact the beef cattle business. That's why NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen is dedicated to bringing you valuable news, information, and education. The goal is to give you the knowledge you need to make the best decisions for your operation. So if you're looking for in-depth coverage of the beef industry and the issues that matter to you, don't miss Cattlemen to Cattlemen, debuting every week on RFD TV and on YouTube.
Every day, cattlemen and women do all they can to provide the very best possible care for their land and their animals. They do so because they're committed to protecting and improving their natural resources and leaving a strong legacy for the next generation. Today, we're highlighting one of the 2020 regional winners of the Environmental Stewardship Award. Let's take you to Colorado now to meet the Region 5 award winner.
Steve Wooten and his family are moving their Red Angus cattle through the red rocks of Beatty Canyon Ranch in southeastern Colorado. This 27,000-acre cow-calf operation has been in Steve's family for generations.
This ranch was purchased by my great-grandfather in 1929, and our family has been there 4 generations for Joy and I, and we're fortunate to have the 5th and 6th generations on the ranch with us, and our daughter, son-in-law, and our grandchildren.
The Wootens were early adopters of conservation practices. They've had to be, since this part of Colorado receives fewer than 14 inches of moisture each year.
This is beautiful land where we live, but it has some challenges. Water is essential, and it's very sparse and hard to come by in this country.
The land in southeast Colorado where we live is fairly rough. It's semi-arid. We have periods of rain, and then we have periods of drought.
We're in an environment where we've got a lot of cactus, we've got minimal growth of forages, and we have to plan continuously how we can stockpile those forages against an area that doesn't have an abundant moisture.
With limited water and grass, Steve and Joy realized that a low stocking rate and good fences would allow them to rotate their cattle frequently, giving pastures a longer time to rest after grazing.
We now have 36 pastures that we can rotate cattle through so that the majority of the ranch during the growing season, the cattle aren't on it.
The reason why we rest the pasture is that when the cows go through the ranch and then the pasture gets rain on it, then it will grow grass and then the cows come back to that pasture. So it's kind of a full circle.
We've been able to improve our drought resistance through pasture management. By being able to have more rest in our pastures, grow more forage for next year by not having cattle in there, lets us go year over year without having to make drastic management decisions.
Steve closely monitors and measures the available forage, and the challenge to provide sufficient water to the cattle is always top of mind.
It's super important to have water on each of these pastures, and we have a pipeline system that runs from a pump, and it's running several miles to water all the cows in the pastures.
Putting tanks and strategically placing tanks in different areas of the pasture have allowed the cows to go and graze areas that predominantly they might not have grazed because there was no water. Also, by spreading the water out, you don't get a heavy impact in one certain area.
Another concern has been the impact of invasive plant species. In fact, several pastures and riparian areas required extensive work after years of harmful encroachment.
Tamarisk had completely dominated the riparian zone of the river, so we took on projects and worked with partners to eradicate the tamarisk on us. The other element that's been encroaching over hundreds of years due to fire suppression is pinyon juniper. We noticed in the 90s that we were about half stocked on a lot of our pastures that were heavily encroached by juniper. So over the years we've been slowly using mechanical means to clear the juniper out of those deep soils that should be predominantly grass, but still leaving plenty of juniper for wildlife, for birds, and for soil holding in areas where erosion is prone.
That is amazing to see the after effects after you clear the pasture and how much you gain back the grass. You're gaining acres back, the grazable acres.
It's not always just talking the talk, but putting their money where their mouth is, and they do it, with their own boots on the ground. It takes time, it's not easy, especially with as many things as Steve and Beatty Canyon is a part of, but it's still important, and they make the time to do it.
Beatty Canyon Ranch is home to a diverse wildlife population, and the family's management practices are aimed at improving the health of the range so both cattle and wildlife can thrive.
The things we've done to improve the land and the water, we've seen great improvement in the wildlife. We've seen more deer and bighorn sheep and turkey.
At Beatty Canyon Ranch, stewardship and conservation is in their DNA, and the Wooten and Burnham families work together to carry forward a legacy that has lasted for generations.
I love what I do because it fills my heart. It gives me great pride to see my kids and my parents all together.
I don't ever wake up in the morning and not appreciate where I live, and just truly blessed to be here and to be part of this family and this operation. I do feel there's some big shoes to fill, but I'm willing to take up the challenge and carry on the legacy of the ranch and the family and pass it on to the 6th generation.
It's the best life to be with your kids and to be in the great outdoors and to see God's creation every day. The land is everything to us. It's who we are.
To say that I love this land is even not enough of an expression of how we feel about this, how blessed we are that the Lord has put us in this position where we can be here, we can grow our family here, that we can leave a legacy behind.
Now, if you'd like to find out more about the Environmental Stewardship Award winners, see photos and videos, or even learn how to nominate someone for this award, visit the website environmentalstewardship.org.
I know conservation runs deep in your blood from having worked with you before, but I mean, you're pretty much a prime example here, you and your family, of sustainability and longevity. This farm's been around for over 100 years.
Yeah, late 1880s, Virginia Century Farm. And in fact, right here, this land that we're at, I mean, I remember as a young boy in the 70s, my grandfather would raise turkeys out on the open range in the field right in front of us. And so I have vivid memories as a 5-year-old boy walking out with my grandfather and him instilling in me a love for production agriculture, but more importantly, a love of the land. And it was his goal and hope that that his son and grandson and hopefully great-grandson will be able to continue in that. And so to see my father embrace that, and then for me to be able to embrace that, it's been really neat. So my kids are able to see it firsthand as well. Every operation, every generation has kind of had to change and adapt. And so my kids are looking at one day, our farm is beautiful here with the views of the mountains. They would like to see us get into great production and maybe put in a winery one day. So it's exciting to see what this place might look like in another 50 years, but it'll definitely still be a farm, but it might look a little bit different.
So, man, I also have to ask you about sustainability and the conversations that are happening with climate change. Again, especially with your perspective of being on both sides of the fence, so to speak, as a producer and as somebody from DC who worked in an agency there. There's a lot of discussions, but we have a really positive story and an opportunity there, don't we?
Absolutely. You know, especially with this new administration, there's a lot of talk about climate change and what we as a nation and a society can do to reduce that threat. Agriculture's got a great story to tell. The conservation work that we're doing, no-till and cover crops and crop rotations, all of those things are so very important. They're good for the environment, they're good for the bottom line, but they really help reduce carbon emissions and climate change. And so, as you said, we have to make sure we're telling our story. I'm hopeful that as these carbon trading markets develop over time, there'll be some real neat opportunities for producers to get some financial gains in trading these credits. They're already doing the work, so it would be nice to see them be rewarded and compensated in a way that helps corporate America that has a huge carbon footprint. Agriculture's doing such a great job on our end to be able to see these markets develop and farmers can win. But as you said, we've got to tell the story. As chief, I had a chance to testify several times before Congress, and farmers were called in to join in these discussions. There's great stories to be told, and they're listening. So we just have to take advantage of those opportunities. And I think as far as funding goes, to make these programs a reality, I think the timing is right. So we just got to be able to show up and tell our story.
And with us telling that story, there's really an opportunity for this administration to commit a lot of resources to pay back those producers that are doing the things that need to be done.
So the 2018 Farm Bill through NRCS, it was about $4.5 billion a year through our 4 major Farm Bill programs. And Secretary Vilsack has already come out and said, that may not be enough. And so I think that the opportunities are going to be there, even through our EQIP program, Environmental Quality Incentive Program. $2 billion a year was only serving about 25% of the applicants that apply. So clearly, in order to meet these demands that we have as an industry, it takes those resource dollars, and I'm confident that more money can be put. I know the farmers can utilize it and do the right thing, but it's expensive. And so if we can get more money put in place to help our farmers and assist in their efforts, I think it's going to be a win-win.
It's fun to see you out here in your natural environment. Clearly you love what you do, Matt. What's the best part about being a producer?
You know, the best part is just being able to wake up every day and look outside and see this beautiful, beautiful farm, and be able to know that the work that we do every day is really feeding our nation. It's sustainable agriculture for that next generation, and just knowing that we're playing a small part in this great task that we have.
Still ahead, it's time for a visit with the cowboy poet, Baxter Black. So stay with us, we'll be right back.
Nasalgen 3 is a new 3-way intranasal BRD vaccine that offers young calves unrivaled protection against devastating respiratory diseases, including IBR, BRSV, and PI3. And it has a unique blue shadow, so there's no second guessing which animals have been vaccinated. To up your protection, choose new Nasalgen 3 PMH, the first and only 5-way intranasal vaccine on the market. Talk to your veterinarian and visit nasalgen.com to learn more.
Did you know that Prefert makes over 1,000 different farm, ranch, and rodeo items? And now, thanks to Prefert Direct, it's easier than ever before to get access to every item Prefert makes delivered direct to your local dealer. For more information about Prefert Direct, visit us at prefert.com. Prefert, America's #1 name in farm, ranch, and rodeo.
Out of the box for the Reride Side of Rodeo, 3 audio-booked rodeo novels by Baxter Black. A total of 23 hours following our cowboy guys and gals on the road to the finals. Rambunctious, exciting, kind-hearted, and funny, of course. $39.90. CDs or downloads, BaxterBlack.com. 800-654-2550. On the road to the rodeo, horse show, state fair, ball game, or grandma's house, climb on up and take a ride with me.
Bud's dad was a good horseman, and he taught his boys to be good horsemen too. They rodeoed, but as time went by, they made their own lives, but they did come back home to the ranch pretty often to visit the folks. On one visit, Bud and Dad went out to look at the horses. Did I tell you about that bay horse I got from Buster? I don't think so, Dad. Does it have anything to do with your limping? Yeah, it was the strangest thing. I just made a little circle. I was coming round down by the gate where the creek is, and danged if I didn't just slip off. Fell right on my butt, left a big old bruise. I couldn't believe it. Maybe I'm getting old. Well, Bud came home for Christmas, and Dad asked, did I tell you about that bay horse that Buster fousted off on me? No, said Bud, feigning interest. What happened? Well, I only had him a couple weeks, you know, and I rode him out to check the well, and when we were coming back, right down there by the creek where that gate is, kerzowie! I mean, that snide bogged his head and blowed up. I mean, it's Casey Tibbs all over. I hung in there, boy, but he pitched me into that board pile. Splinters went everywhere. Lucky all I hurt was my ribs. You know I can still ride them, but he got me that day. Well, Bud was back for the branding in April. What's new? Did I tell you about that man-killing bronc, that bay horse that Buster stuck me with? You mean? Yeah, nearly broke my hip. I took him out to the junipers, you know, where the creek is, and down by the gate, and kerzowie, he came unglued. I mean, he stuck his nose in the dirt. Well, he went to bucking. I laid into him. I mean, you knew I could do it. But he bucked across that creek like he was auditioning for the finals, and then he wiped me off on the gate post. I tell you, son, he is one crooked booger.
Dad sat back with a sigh and scratched himself. Well, one thing for certain, said Bud. You keep telling that story and one of these days, you're gonna get him rogue. This is Baxter Black and Bud from out there.
From the very beginning, Richie has been dedicated to one thing: helping people deliver fresh, constant water to their animals. Today's Richie waterers rely on a valve design that remains much the same as it was in 1921. It's a simple idea: do it right, and the rest will take care of itself. We never set out to create a company that would be around for 100 years. We just wanted to create something great.
Cattle producers across the country work hard to care for their animals and their land. The USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Service is there to help. Find out how you can work with NRCS to develop a conservation plan for your operation. Find possible funding resources for implementing conservation practices, or get free expert advice on ways to improve your farm or ranch. Visit the website nrcs.usda.gov today.
An upcoming production sale to advertise? Then contact the Cattlemen to Cattlemen marketing team or your breed association to learn more.
Welcome back. You know, it's important to remember that we never really reach the end of the path to sustainability. It's a continuous journey being carried out every day by our farmers and ranchers across the United States. We asked a few beef producers to share their perspective on sustainability and what it means to them.
When we go to the farmers markets, we tell them we're the farmer, and they're shocked because we're less than 2% of the population. And so we believe in articulating how we safe handle our cattle and that we farm very holistically, so we feel a responsibility to give people the message how the cattle industry handles livestock and how we manage the land.
To me, it's doing the right thing. God gave us this land and we are the stewards of it, and we really need to do the very best that we can. You want what's best for the land because what's best for the land is best for the creatures that are on it, whether it's humans or if it's cattle or wildlife or whatever it is. And there needs to be more of us, you know, sharing what we're doing and that we're doing the right thing. And it's just explaining that better or illustrating it better, showing that we are healthy, we have healthy grasses, we have healthy cows, and we do care about what we're raising and growing.
To the consumer, I'd like to explain to them that they don't have to worry about their beef choice in terms of sustainability or of animal welfare. That cattle that are out in pasture, they're in their natural environment. They spend the majority of their life in the pasture in natural systems, and the final portion of the life when they're in the feedlot is just a short part of the time. But even at that point, their welfare is the highest regard by the people that are taking care of them.
we need to get the word out to the other 98% of the population that isn't involved in the beef industry and teach them the benefits of beef and what it does, not only from a nutrition standpoint, but from an environmental standpoint and a sustainability standpoint on rangelands like this. I wish everybody could drive through the ranch one day and just see how it's managed, how we're a family operation, how we work hard to provide a quality product for consumers to enjoy.
So would you like to rewatch an episode of Cattlemen to Cattlemen or even catch up on anything you've missed? Then visit our YouTube page. You'll find replays of all of our shows filled with educational segments and producer profiles from across the country. Well, each week families send us some amazing photos of their farms and ranches. And it's easy to see the pride they have in the land, their animals, and the family members who will carry on the tradition of conservation. Let's take a look at a few of those beautiful snapshots in this week's Legacy Photos. Want to see your photo here on Cattlemen to Cattlemen? You can submit your favorite shots a couple of different ways. Either message them to us on the Cattlemen to Cattlemen Facebook page or email them to c2c@beef.org. Well, that wraps up this edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. I'm Russell Nemitz. Thank you so much for spending time with us, and we'll see you again next week right here on RFD TV.